The release of Michael left a lot of fans with one big question. What exactly did they have to cut to make the movie work? What was originally planned as a much darker final act, including the 1993 Neverland raid and the allegations that followed Michael Jackson, had to be cut out after the production discovered a legal settlement clause that barred Jordan Chandler from being depicted or even named in the film. That one legal problem forced major reshoots, delayed the release, and completely changed the ending of the movie. So in this video, we are breaking down the exact scene that had to be removed, why it could not stay in the film, and how it changed Michael forever.
Manager?
Okay, I'm gonna get a uniform for you guys.
Okay. Who else is here? Just you? Okay, why don't you stay here?
They did it to try and belittle me, to try to take away my pride. But I went through the whole system with them, and at the end, I wanted the public to know that I was okay.
Although Michael has been praised for its performances and for recreating some of Michael Jackson's most iconic moments, there is one huge part of the movie that did not survive the rewrite. The film originally included an entire final stretch built around the 1993 Neverland raid and the misconduct allegations Michael Jackson denied. But after lawyers discovered a clause in Jackson's settlement with the family of Jordan Chandler that barred him from being depicted or even mentioned in a film, that whole section had to be cut, the ending had to be reshot, and the release was pushed back by months.
One of the most tumultuous productions of any movie I can ever recall is this Michael Jackson biopic. So Lionsgate and Antoine Fuqua get the rights from the Michael Jackson estate with all the guidelines to make this Michael Jackson biopic. And everybody loves it. At the studio, everybody thinks this is amazing. This is going to win awards. This is going to be $1 billion film, blah, blah, blah. But oh, wait, it was specified in their settlement with the Michael Jackson estate that any future dramatization of Michael Jackson cannot include our family.
And that is why fans walked out of Michael feeling like something was missing, because something was missing. The movie now ends in 1988, right in the middle of the bad era, with a title card that says, "His story continues." That ending was not just a stylistic choice, it was the result of the film losing an entire controversial chapter that had originally been part of its backbone. In earlier versions, the movie was meant to open with the 1993 police raid on Neverland Ranch, a scene in which Antoine Fuqua said he filmed Jackson being stripped naked and treated like an animal and a monster.
What happened when they arrested you? What did they do to you?
They were supposed to go in and just check fingerprints and do the whole thing that they do when they take somebody in. They manhandled me very roughly. My shoulder is dislocated, literally. It's hurting me very badly. I'm in pain all the time. See this arm? This is as far as I can reach it. Same with this side over here.
Because of what happened at the police station?
Yeah, at the police station. And what they did to, if you saw what they did to my arms, it was very bad what they did.
So what exactly got cut? Not a tiny moment, not a background line. The original third act was designed to move into 1993, with the Neverland investigation becoming the opening of the film's darkest chapter. That meant the audience would have been taken from the height of superstardom into the kind of public crisis that defined the rest of Jackson's life. Instead of ending on a victory lap, the movie was originally headed toward a legal and emotional collapse. That is the scene that had to go. And once you know that, the final cut starts to make a lot more sense. The film stops in 1988 at Wembley, just before the period the original script was moving toward. According to the reporting, the production had to tear up the ending after discovering the settlement restriction, which meant the last act had to be rebuilt from scratch. That is why the movie feels so abrupt. It is not just an editorial decision, it is a legal boundary line.
Fast forward now, and they doing the reshoots, they're getting everything together, and the plan becomes that they're going to do Michael Jackson's biopic as two separate movies. That they're going to, because the movie was coming in at close to 4 hours, and hey, why not make $2 billion instead of $1 billion? So they're going to split it in two.
The scene that was cut was not just there for shock value either. It would have changed the entire tone of the film. Antoine Fuqua has said he shot material where Jackson was humiliated during the Neverland raid sequence, which suggests the original version was meant to push well past the safe, polished biopic formula. It would have placed the viewer inside the fallout, not just the legend. That is a very different movie from the one that finally reached theaters. The reason it had to be removed was brutally simple. The legal settlement tied tied to Jordan Chandler made that material impossible to keep. According to reporting, the clause prevented Chandler from being depicted or named, and once the filmmakers realized that, they no longer had a version of the film that could legally tell that part of the story. That is why the production had to go through emergency reshoots, and why the movie's entire final act had to be reworked before release. Those reshoots were not small either. Reports say the film needed about 22 days of additional shooting, with the estate footing the bill for roughly $10 million to $15 million in extra costs. That is a huge amount of money just to fix the back end of a movie. It tells you the cut scene was not a minor subplot. It was central enough to force a near rebuild.
You take it all the way up to the triumph of releasing Thriller, if that's what they're going to end.
Because you're also covering off the wall. I mean,
yeah,
it's
you're
huge.
covering off the wall, like all that stuff. Billie Jean, you know, that whole, all that stuff is really, really interesting. And then you end it on a triumphant note.
And that also explains why the ending now feels so carefully chosen. The film now closes with a promise that the story has simply paused rather than ended. The film stops before addressing the allegations, and the title card feels like a deliberate signal toward a future continuation. In other words, the movie does not feel like a full conclusion. It feels like the production hit a wall, backed up, and stopped right before the most difficult chapter began. That missing chapter matters because it was going to change how audiences understood the whole film. If Michael had kept the original scene, the audience would have seen the moment when public admiration begins to curdle into suspicion. The story would have shifted from rise to reckoning. It would have forced viewers to sit inside the pressure surrounding Jackson in the early 1990s, and it would have made the movie far less like a celebration and far more like a confrontation. That is exactly why the cut changes the emotional spine of the film.
I have been subjected. I shall not in this statement respond to all of the false allegations being made against me, since my lawyers have advised me that this is not the proper forum in which to do that. I will say that I am particularly upset by the handling of this mass matter by the incredible, terrible mass media. At every opportunity, the media has dissected and manipulated these allegations to reach their own conclusions. I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me. Don't treat me like a criminal.
It also helps explain the bigger criticism surrounding Michael. A lot of viewers felt the film was too sanitized, and the reason for that is now obvious. The original version apparently was not sanitized. It was built to go into the controversy, but the legal limits around the Chandler settlement made that impossible. So the movie that remained is one that stops before the hardest material begins. That is not just a creative choice. It is the result of a story the filmmakers were not allowed to tell. There is also a reason people keep talking about a sequel. The missing third act is so large that it almost feels like the first film was only half of a longer story. Lionsgate has already revealed there is more story to tell, and that a sequel will pick up the material the first movie could not legally include. If that happens, the scene that got cut from Michael may end up becoming the backbone of Michael 2.
In the film?
Everything. Like every director do. It's like heartbreaking when you got to cut some stuff, man. You know what I mean? Especially, Michael, there's some great stuff, man. I mean, you know, but that's every movie, right? This is what movies are. You know, you kind of have to make some hard choices sometimes for the bigger picture, you know?
So when people ask why that entire scene had to be cut, the answer is not complicated. The movie ran into a legal wall. The production had to reshoot, rewrite, and repackage the ending into something that could legally make it to theaters. That is why the film stops where it does. That is why the missing scene matters. And that is why Michael feels like a story that was interrupted just as it was about to get real. If you look at the final film now, the absence is almost louder than the footage itself. The ending at Wembley looks triumphant, but the movie was clearly built to continue into something far heavier. That is the strange thing about deleted scenes. Sometimes what gets cut does not disappear. It lingers. It changes the shape of everything around it. And in Michael, the missing scene is exactly what gives the whole movie its unfinished feeling. So now I want to know what you think. Should the movie have kept that scene and pushed forward with the darker material, or was cutting it the only legal option? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, subscribe for more deep dives, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one.